Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Welcome back to our trauma recovery series. And these are the live events that we do. So, you should be able to stream this on YouTube or Facebook platforms. And feel free to jot in questions as we go along here. Feel free to let us know where you're from and just say hi. It's always fun to see where everybody is actually from. And we have brought back Cathy O'Brien today with us again. So, if you haven't checked out Cathy's episode, hers is the one that's currently out, I believe, right at the moment. So just go to the inspirehealthpodcast.com and you can listen to her full episode.
You can watch it on the YouTube channel as well.
Yeah. And Cathy has written a number of books. This is the main one that we were talking about was
her latest one.
This is her, I think this is your latest one, right, Cathy?
Yes.
So PTSD, Time to Heal. So really great read, really user-friendly and very practical. And so we bring Cathy back for the live now, and we're going to answer some of your questions as well as some of the ones that have been written in ahead of time. So Cathy, welcome back. So wonderful to have you here again.
Thank you. It's great to be back. You all do so much to inspire health, not only physically and mentally, but spiritually and every level. And it's so important what you all are doing, and what a great forum to be able to help people deal with trauma these days in light of the solutions that you two offer. It's wonderful. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. Well, it's not necessarily the solutions that we offer. We're sort of compiling. We a lot of times we think of ourselves as like interconnection. So it's like we feel like our job in a lot of ways is to kind of pull lots of different information together and round it out in a way that becomes user-friendly for people. So like with something like this, with a series on trauma, we feel that this is such an important series right at this point in time, particularly. It always is, but I think even more so right now, collectively, as I think people are working with trauma. And it's nice to have a lot of different perspectives so that you feel, who do you resonate with? What type of work do you resonate with at this point in time? And you might resonate with one person and not with another person. That's totally cool. It's whatever it is that sort of feels right for you at any point in time. That's what you want to then investigate a little bit. The most important part is that we actually just start to
have these conversations.
Exactly. Have these conversations and then start to work with stuff as it comes up.
Exactly. The conversation is starting everywhere, because mind control masked as a virus affected people so horrifically for so long that now they're waking up and they're looking around and saying, what just happened? And they're realizing how many ways our lives have been affected and directed. And people are reclaiming their free thought. And to do it, it takes a conversation. And the people need to start talking with each other again. It's happening everywhere. And then, like you said, on this podcast, the whole purpose of it, of bringing all these points of view together, it helps people to start processing information and looking into different areas that they can go research further, because everybody needs to research for themselves, but they need to have light shined on some direction where answers are. People need answers these days.
Yeah. Well, one of the messages that I really like in your book and the way that you describe is that we've got everything we need within ourselves to heal and to heal from trauma. And I absolutely understand sometimes the necessity to have like a guide to assist, but the realization that everything is within yourself to heal is a really important one to really come to and to own.
It is. It's also a lot of peace of mind and very comforting to know that it is within us all to heal. And the methods are very simple for being able to heal from any level of trauma, no matter how extreme. If it was a torturous, kind of robotic mind control that I experienced on a White House Pentagon level under MK Ultra mind control, or if it's information control, like people have been experiencing through censored media that has been trying to shape our views for so long, and through the global education system, regardless of the level of mind manipulation and hindrance, it is within us all to reclaim our strength of spirit, our free thought, and be able to expand our thinking again. Very important for understanding what happened and how we can vigilantly protect our free thought going forward.
Anything you want to start with?
Not as yet. No.
Cathy, I'd love to dive into some of the different questions that came up from before. So one of the ones that we had gotten into a little bit in the interview was specifically around depression. I mean, depression is major problem throughout pretty much, well, particularly North America, but really all over the world. Depression's really quite huge. And one of the things that you talked about, it's astounding at how the subconscious issues can undermine our well-being, even those that we've already consciously dealt with. And then I think you talk about in page 55 in your book, basically how you learn to choose your own thoughts so you wouldn't get sucked down the black hole of negativity. I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit more about that experience and share the process for people that would benefit from it.
Well, my subconscious had been manipulated so extensively through traumas, psychological and physical. The most horrible being knowing my daughter was being horrifically abused and trafficked and mind controlled. Those were horrible things that not was manipulated on a subconscious level through the use of neuro-linguistic programming, or NLP. The perpetrators who are in control of our mind are the same ones who stole US elections and the same ones who are in control of the media today in order to shape the views of everyone. So when the subconscious mind is manipulated, whether it's my extreme or it's information control, if we pick up a pen and start writing out that negativity, whatever it is, and we're able to consciously deal with it that way, it takes the conscious, logical part of the brain to move a pen. So by moving a pen, we're shifting this horrific mind manipulation, whether it's from the media or what's happening in society, or if it's the fear generated through the whole COVID thing, whatever it is, if we write that out, then we're shifting it out of the subconscious over into the logic part of the brain and consciously acknowledging it in a different way. This allows for healing within the brain itself and psychologically, so that we can actually heal from the imposition of the negativity that we've been subjected to. So that's a crucial part of being able to reclaim our choice of thoughts and directions again. Because when we sit in front of the TV and we're bombarded with the NLP and the negativity coming through the TV, it's affecting our subconscious. We need to get that out of there. But this undercurrent of negativity can create extreme depression, because if we don't take care of our thoughts on both the conscious and subconscious level, it can change into brain chemistry. And that brain chemistry can become a horrible depression. And then, of course, the pharmaceutical companies will jump right in on that and offer a drug for it, when in fact, it's within us to heal from it ourselves and to be able to deal with the negativity in a positive light. So as I write out the negative of my past, as I write out the negative that I'm bombarded with through the media or anything else, like I still use those methods today, I also write a solution. And having to think in terms of a solution pushes the brain in a completely different direction. It's a positive direction and helps, again, to balance that brain chemistry and lift out of depression. And by choosing thoughts to think in terms of a solution, you're taking control of your own brain chemistry and able to move forward into a much more positive light. Without tending to that, I found after my life's experience that if I started going down that rabbit hole of negativity, it was like a black hole, and I'd pull everything in with it. It didn't matter what it was. Everything looked so dark. Everything looked hopeless. Everything looked negative, until I dealt with it and said, hey, wait a minute. This isn't real. This isn't true. This isn't all there is. It just seems like it at the moment. I need to lift myself out of this. So then I would start writing. I either write poetry, or I just write out the negativity or whatever, or change my thoughts. Take a walk, get out in nature, breathe in the fresh air, get some sunshine in your eyes. Those kind of things help a whole lot to change thoughts as well. Sometimes it helps even just to clean house. because sometimes organizing your house organizes your mind. And in that process, take the time to be gentle with yourself, compassionate with yourself, kind with yourself, and stay positive. It helps. And once you're in that positive space and you've taken that time for yourself, it's from there that you can lift others. And reaching out to lift others reinforces the positive and helps keep you out of depression.
Mm-hmm.
That was a big takeaway for us too during our last conversation, Cathy. When you had spoken of that, I think you had said that Mark had mentioned to you, do not have a negative thought unless it's followed by a solution.
Yeah.
And that's a pretty powerful practice.
Without a solution. And that one thing is probably key for everybody these days, because instead of just complaining about what's going on in society or complaining about the negativity, you got to talk about solutions and start thinking in those terms and being able to assert it, because that's what's going to make the positive change so necessary in this world. It's not that we're ignoring the negative. We have to be aware of it, because awareness is the first step towards positive, necessary change. But thinking in terms of that solution is what empowers us to start making a difference in light of what we know.
Yeah, well, and to really come up with a valuable tool, to really come up with a good solution requires you to actually have to have looked fairly clearly at what the problem was in the first place. So I know even on different groups, it's like, it's just, even the groups that are, not happy with the way things are, but the focus is still just on all of the problems after problems after problems going on. It's like it gets really heavy. And then I think
Or the other extreme of, let's not look at it, let's think positive only.
Yeah, where they're not really addressing what's actually, they're not kind of taking a wholehearted look at what's there to then come up with a realistic solution that you can work with. But on either one of those spectrums, I feel like it's kind of missing the boat on it. I like the idea, and we actually had some people over for dinner after we had done your interview, and they were talking about some of that stuff, and I said, well, let me tell you what Cathy O'Brien would say. And so we did that and had them flipped it, and it was a really, really great sort of segue from the podcast into that real life scenario, where then people had to actually stop, and we started to think, okay, well, what does that mean? Then what can you actually do towards finding a solution for that?
And what was really fun is what it sprouted was this brainstorming of possibilities and visions. So it got us into this creative mode rather than this depleted, helpless state that we were in, just thinking of or ruminating on the negative.
And
seeing more that happen all over the world, really. So many people who are waking up to face the horrors of mind control, to find that we've been manipulated by mind control masked as a virus, to find that these perpetrators of this New World Order agenda are funding their agenda through human trafficking, human harvesting. That's the most horrible thing for anybody to have to face. I think that all of humanity has got to face the reality. It's been going on my whole life. I was born into it. I've been blowing the whistle on it for 30 years. I was free of it when Mark rescued me out of it. And here it is. It's so big and it's so pervasive, and we have to face that reality and stop the sexual trafficking of our children. What that does is it creates a dissociative disorder within the children and makes them compliant for a robotic society. That's the ultimate point, because the point of the whole New World Order is where a handful of big guys make all the money and we do all the work. And they need us compliant. They need us slaves. They need us doing exactly what we're told to do. And to create that kind of compliance within the brain, the rape of a child, that is the number one key towards control that was found in the old Himmler research, because trauma affects our brains that way, where it's so horrific that it's though our conscious mind takes flight and the subconscious mind is open to being easily led and manipulated. We become highly suggestible. And sometimes even just hearing and learning about the human trafficking that's going on is a harsh reality to face, and it's traumatic to the person at the time, which is very important then for being able to move forward in terms of solutions, to be able to acknowledge the reality of that problem and move forward in light of love, because love is the most powerful force in the universe. They're feeding off trauma, they're feeding off negativity. They have a whole different dark agenda, but love is the most powerful force. And when we live that love and we move forward in light of that love, we're able to come up with the solutions and start making a difference for the children. Stop the human trafficking, be able to safeguard the children in our own communities, looking around and seeing how we can affect it and where we can do it, whether it's in the school systems or the justice systems or just in our own backyard. Wherever it is, we start seeing that possibility. And then what's so amazing in the whole process is that caring for this atrocity unleashed on humanity that's on a global scale, when we realize this and take responsibility for what's happening and start moving forward in light of love, we're all united in purpose. And that is going to be one of the biggest global uniters that could possibly happen. That's what's going to unite humanity in light of love and peace. That's where world peace is going to come in, because we're going to start making a difference in reclaiming our right to free thought, our right to protect our children, our right to face the reality of what they know happens to our brain when trauma occurs. We need to take control of that by educating ourselves. We need to understand our own brains and then start safeguarding it and our children going forward from that point on. And that's a very powerful and beautiful path to live. It's a celebration of freedom every step of the way, to know that you have faced that darkness and overcome it in light of love. One spark of light overcomes darkness, and that's all it takes.
Cathy, you had reached out to me and we were on completely the same wavelengths. Speaking of our children, as you know, there was a massive grave site that was recently brought to light in the news of 215 Native children in Kamloops, BC. I understand that you have a little bit of information with regards to that with your journey with Mark quite a few years ago. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yes, and in 1999, Mark and I spent on the subject of what was happening to the children. And it was because of the knowledge that I had on the Jesuit mind control, MK Ultra interference, and what they were doing in the Catholic child homes for children, and what was happening in Canada as well, because it was my experience from having known as a child Pierre Trudeau, that Pierre Trudeau was very much a part of the MK Ultra New World Order Jesuit agenda, and the children were being traumatized and harvested and trafficked back then. Like I said, I was born into it. And I knew Pierre Trudeau when I was 9 years old. I was exposed to him and his perversions and was acutely aware of what he knew. So it was because of that, and because of my exposure to Brian Mulroney in the course of the implementation of global education on a global scale, that brought us into Canada, speaking out in various places, including Vancouver Island, including Edmonton, where we spoke with some of the indigenous elders on the same subject happening to the children, because there were many there from within the indigenous groups. They knew what was going on. It's just that no one was listening and doing anything to stop it. Now here we are, all these years later, and it's finally coming to light, and people are becoming fully aware of what's going on. It's the same as the human trafficking that's going on in the US. It's all starting to come to light, And it's going to unite the world as we all stop this horrific, horrific atrocity.
You know, we just talked to a Mohawk elder the other day, a friend of ours, Daryl Williams, and around this whole concept, or around this whole atrocity of what's just been unleashed, or what's been found in Kamloops.
And that conversation is going to air, by the way, next Wednesday. We'll post that episode as well.
It'll be on we'll post that one on Wednesday. And he said almost the same thing that you just said there too, Cathy. He said that, you know, I mean, he's a really spiritual, wise sort of soul. And so he basically, because there's a lot of anger, right? That's natural. There's going to be so much anger and hurt and shame and guilt and all these emotions that are surfacing within his community. And he said ultimately that it's going to be the information around the kids that's going to come up that's going to catapult people to start to heal. And that's what's going to that's what's going to be transmuted into compassion that's ultimately going to heal.
I think that one of the most horrific torture I ever endured was, like I said, knowing that my daughter was abused. We all have those maternal or paternal instincts within us to protect the children. And it's a very vulnerable point for all of us for being led. And it's so horrific that as we realize what's been going on with the children, we start protecting them and move into a mode of taking personal responsibility for the knowledge that we have and being able to apply it in a positive way to stop this process. We need to safeguard our brains throughout. And I think it's imperative that people understand the mind-brain function that has been deliberately suppressed from mental health by like Dr. Ewan Cameron, the founder of the American Psychiatric and Psychological Associations. He was also affiliated with mental health in Canada as well. And the information was deliberately suppressed, though, so that people wouldn't have the knowledge that is our defense against mind control. Knowledge is our defense against it. Truth makes us free. And this information that had been suppressed was what Mark Phillips learned in the highest levels of U.S. intelligence mind sciences. And he was so outraged to see that such simple solutions for people, such pertinent information that they have a right to know and a need to know about their mind-brain function, was being suppressed so that it could control people instead. Because within that is the understanding that sexually abusing a child, especially prior to age 5, creates dissociative identity disorder. It's not that even as an infant that I could determine that my father's sexual abuse of me was wrong, because I couldn't have judged that, but my brain knew it was wrong, and it responded to that trauma just the same. And it compartmentalized memory of that event, actually physically shut down neuron pathways in the brain around the memory of that event, so the rest of the mind can function normally. This is professionally defined as the mind's sane defense to trauma too horrible to comprehend. This brain compartmentalization mechanism that we have is something that we need to understand, because that is why our children are being targeted. That's why they're being trafficked. It's why pedophilia is being promoted as though it's something acceptable when it is not. It's altering the course of human evolution. It disrupts any level of mind control, any level of that kind of compartmentalization that happens within the brain, disrupts our ability to live our life's purpose, freely live our life's purpose and make a positive difference in the world. I know from experience that without free thought, there's no free will. Without free will, there's no soul expression. Without that soul expression, there's no strength of spirit to be able to stand up and make the necessary difference in the world, to live life's purpose, to live life in peace and harmony, to live in exploring all the beautiful, miraculous things of life, to realize the capabilities we have within ourselves for healing physically, mentally, psychologically, spiritually. We're so resilient. We have so much that we're capable of. But this mind manipulation that's been going on through the pedophilia, the promotion of pedophilia, the allowing it to go on through justice systems, ignoring it, the censorship of the mind-brain function that we have such a right and a need to know, have all been disrupting our free will ability to live life's purpose. These perpetrators hell-bent on this slave society global agenda, new world order, that it of course it is a global agenda, and it's one that's been taking root for some time, and it's very widespread. But they have this information and they've kept it from us. And that's why when Mark rescued me right out of my victimization, because he was so outraged that human trafficking was going on, that this pedophilia was being promoted, that information on mind brain function was being suppressed. And he rescued my daughter and I right out of it and handed me the keys so that I could heal my own mind. And I healed from within. That means I healed with strength of spirit. I healed strong. I healed with those capabilities that we have within us. And then I was able to release that information, because it was my experience to heal, in PTSD time to heal. Mark had wanted to release that information, but he was bound by laws of sedition from being able to release it because of his exposure in intelligence, mind science. But my experience was to heal. So we released it. And now it's available for everybody to be able to start applying that information to themselves and educating themselves on mind brain function. And as soon as they get a piece of information, research it more, research further, because the more we research, the more we know, the more we see that we have amazing capabilities within us to be able to heal and to stop the atrocities that have proliferated for so long in our world, and be able to reclaim our freedom and protect our children.
That's incredible. Cathy, like I just, as you're speaking and going through all these details and insights, I think what an incredibly timely conversation to be having right now. Like when you're speaking of free thought, free will, free expression, like we're at a climax right now where we're all of us, whether we choose to or not, can see that being played out in real time very clearly right before our eyes.
That is so true. But these perpetrators are just a small handful. It's definitely not the majority, which is why they have to use mind control on the masses, because they know that we would rebel against them and way outnumber them. So they're creating these illusions of power. But they only have as much power and control as we allow them to steal. By living the love we are, that's not their energy. That's not the energy they're looking for. That's the energy they fear. The energy they fear is our strength of spirit. They want to generate that negativity, that terror, that horror. And no, we're not buying into fear anymore. Truth frees us from fear. And it's opportunities like this that we get to bring out and empower other people with that truth that makes us free.
Mm-hmm. I have a comment from Bits of Sunshine here, and she has said that she's been aware of this information for 52 years. She said one thing that's important to mention is that many people don't look at is, aside from trafficking, no one's talking about the children being molested in their own homes today, right now, by an uncle or a brother. And I think that you're absolutely right. I think that is so incredibly more commonplace. And one of the interviews that'll be coming up down the road, we talk about there's a major study that was done called a adverse childhood events study, or an ACE study for children, and it was looking at the number of adverse childhood events and how that related to literally everything from all-cause mortality. Just about every problem you can think of gets exacerbated the more that there is something that happened in those children under everywhere from under 18. And so I think you're absolutely right. That's a huge one. where do we even begin with that? So it's like, Cathy, from your point of view, it's like, yeah, on a big scale, there's this trafficking going on. There was, when we talk about the native children, there's been genocide and atrocity that's gone on with that for a long time. Where do you begin with the problems that are happening right at someone's home?
I think understanding pedophilia and being able to get that information out there. I wonder how many of those families are multi-generational. Mine was multi-generational. My father had been sexually abused. My mother was sexually abused. They were sexually abusing me. And the Hitler-Himmler research had shown that after 3 generations, it starts to become autogenic. It starts to become just a natural action within the family structure itself. So you may be looking at multi-generational families of pedophilia, which is why it's so important we get education out there on what it really means. If people understood that, I think they could start breaking the cycle and realize, oh, the sexual abuse I experienced wasn't okay. And what it's doing to to my child is harming their brain. It's harming their growth. It's harming their ability to express spirit. When they start realizing that, I think it's just going to be like a huge quantum leap of evolution where we're going to be able to start stopping that multi-generational process. In so many cases, human trafficking occurs right out of the home. It's not the prostitute on the street corner as much as it is happening within a person's own home. It's like the JonBenet Ramseys that are dying, that are being killed because they're being prostituted to other pedophiles within their own home structure. That's so common these days. And we need to realize that it's going on and start opening our eyes to it. That's why I say when we arm ourselves with this knowledge and we're educated to it, we open our eyes to the reality of it. We'll see it in our own backyard. We'll see it in our neighbor. We'll start seeing it around us. We need to to educate teachers as to what's going on with it. Instead, we have these teachers' unions that are focused on manipulating children into robotic compliance to march to new world orders by the rewriting of history in the school system. There's a huge, the global education structure that has been going on now for at least 2 generations, going on 3. We better get on this and change it within the school system and educate the teachers as to what they're actually doing. Get them to start thinking about what they're teaching instead of just following orders and doing what they think they know. They need to expand their thinking as well and do their own research and parents need to start holding the teachers accountable. With that said, the teachers need to know how to start spotting the children who've been abused, because it's not hard to see. They're highly suggestible. There's many signs of childhood sexual abuse. And if they're educated on that, then we can start a new awareness right there. If churches started paying attention to what's going on in that regard, any place where community is involved, the more people who have eyes to see, ears to hear, and soul to know the truth of what's happening to these children are going to be in a position to make that difference. And somewhere along the way, we all need to find compassion in our hearts to be able to make that difference. Because just accusing each other and hating each other is just going to create its own problem. We need to educate each other, and we need to start stopping this problem that is so pervasive. It's an invisible menace, but it can be seen once we realize that it's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And part of the education process, again, is having these conversations. Bits of Sunshine, you mentioned that you had you were molested by your stepdad for 9 years. This is exactly why we're holding this series and having these conversations. They're important. I myself was also molested by an uncle for years when I was quite young. And it needs to be spoken about. We need to come face to face with all these dark shadows that we typically hide away, and start to bring it back into our attention and our focus and our care, so that we can heal. We can heal, and it's not just us individually, but we can see this on a global level right now. There's a global level of trauma that we're all living through, that we're all moving through right now, and so we can hold each other within that process.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, that's so beautifully stated. And you know, if we pick up that pen and we write, we start healing the brain so that we don't get the multi-generational effect. We're the ones who can break the chain. We're the ones who break that process, and we can take that responsibility when we acknowledge what happened to us and write it out and start the conversation and make it known, and help people to understand how pervasive this has become, because it's gone unchecked for so long. Nobody has wanted to see it, and the court systems have been corrupted. We need to stop it. It's up to us. And pick up a pen, start writing it out, and take back our mind-brain function in that process, so that we can go back to the direction of life's purpose that we were intended to lead all along.
You know, Cathy, you said a few important things there too. And I was reading a book of one of my teachers before. It was Dr. David Hawkins. He talks about the map of consciousness. And he would say, you know, the world that we see is a direct reflection of the level of consciousness that's creating it. So if we don't like what we're seeing, then there's a level of consciousness there that's allowing that to come into existence. And so if we don't like what that looks like, what we do have the capacity to do is to heal as much as we can within ourselves to raise that level of consciousness that then ultimately helps to raise the level of the sea. And he said the things that were ultimately important to raise consciousness, and you said almost every one of them, were knowledge and understanding, compassion, and integrity. And those three things will help everybody start to heal ourselves. And then that raises the level of consciousness where I feel like eventually, if we collectively keep moving in a level of consciousness, eventually this type of stuff that's going on is not going to be existing in that state anymore. It's just not going to be something that happens.
Exactly. And it is that as we realize it, it uses it. We see the divisiveness that is going on, and how we're being told to like blame each other for everything and hate each other, and all this dark negative nonsense that doesn't really even apply. But we step back and realize that it's being used to keep us separated, and it's being used to keep that collective consciousness from joining. It's destroying our natural respect for each other. You know, respect for ourselves, respect for each other. It comes with a compassion. It comes with a care. Daring to care about each other again, instead of snap judging and accusing. You know, it's a whole different level of consciousness to be able to reach out and start lifting each other instead. And that's what we need, and that's what we need to get back to. And that collective consciousness is going to raise the whole vibration of the planet into back where we belong, and take us out of this darkness that has been imposed on us all.
Cathy, you talk a lot about journaling, and in your book there's a lot of specific ways of journaling and whatnot. I'd like to nail that down a little bit more. So as far as the types of journaling and when they're appropriate and when they're not appropriate. So for example, I know when I've done different journaling in the past, it's been a lot of times it's been around almost more like a catharsis. It's been more of I'm just journaling freehand. I'm not stopping, taking my pen off the page. I'm getting out of my thinking brain. more into my body and just letting the emotion gonna go. And then I would burn it after, with the idea that if I came back to that, sometimes in the process of letting go and surrendering what was coming up, if I intellectually reread it, then sometimes I would actually get rehooked again. And I feel like that is a different kind of a journaling than, say, the memory retrieval journaling that's required when you've gone through a certain degree of trauma. Can you share a little bit around those processes and when one's more appropriate for another?
Yes. Again, with that emotional kind of writing, the journaling that you're talking about, to add a solution would be much more productive than just burning it, because then you move forward in a whole nother level with it. Instead of burning it, can almost like push it back down instead of allow for a moving forward. Mark always told me that how memory is written out is more important than what is written out. And so now, instead of just dealing with emotional trauma and with a solution, but dealing with the compartmentalized memory and being able to write that out, there's an important method to writing out that memory that is so crucial to understand. And it is detailed in PTSD Time to Heal, because how it is written out is more important than what is written out. And just understanding that alone helped me gain a better perspective on the magnitude of what I had been exposed to and experienced under MK Ultra mind control, because what I witnessed and experienced on a White House Pentagon level was so extremely horrific that instead of bogging down in that, I stuck to the formula for writing out that memory, and it helped a whole lot to maintain that form. It's important to, when writing out memory, to not change brain chemistry by stopping to eat. Like, so often it seems like, oh man, I really just want something to eat, because there's like almost a knowing that you're going to change the brain chemistry and stop that from surfacing. So it's important to understand that your brain might want to shut itself down chemically by making you hungry. Don't do it. Just wait until you're through writing out that particular memory. Um, Drink water, be careful with caffeine. These are important things for maintaining the proper chemistry while you're writing out memory. And then there's a lot of questions to ask yourself as you're going through the process. Once you've written out a compartment, it's really good to be able to bridge it over to another compartment by asking, like, where did I go afterwards? Where was I before? Because now you're bridging the compartmentalization of memory. So there's a continuity in the memory flow. At the same time, it's crucial. It's so very, very important to never fill in the blanks. When I was writing out memory, it was so disjointed, and it was never written for anybody else to read. So it didn't have to be grammatically correct. The handwriting didn't have to really be necessarily legible. It didn't have to flow in a storyline. It was bits and pieces here and there. I ended up getting notebooks that I still use now, that's got this little side section so that I can do a side note off there, because so often there's something will come up and surface, and you just make a note of that and then go back to what's being written out. It can be very disjointed, so much so that as I was writing out memory, Mark and I were literally dodging bullets. I mean, he had rescued me right out of the swamp, right out from under the perpetrators, and it was a very precarious time for us. And I didn't know where I had been. I was totally amnesic at the time. I'd been so strategically tortured, traumatized with the compartmentalization of memory. So as fast as I was writing it out, he would have it validated by very concerned members of law enforcement, U.S. Customs, U.S. Secret Service. They would validate the information, and as quickly as it was validated, we disseminated it to various members of concerned watchdog groups, members of Congress that were overseeing, other concerned members in intelligence. Mark wasn't the only one that was aware of the criminal activity going on, but it disseminated out there. It was bits and pieces. It was still just bits and pieces. When I was going to testify to Congress on what had happened in 1995, it was censored from Congress for reasons of national security. And that's such an outrage that such pertinent truth was being censored that way. With national security invoked on it, Mark and I were able to release the information that had already been validated, because it's national security being invoked on it validates it that much more. And we released it in book form so that members of Congress could have that information at such a pertinent and pivotal point in history. So in 1995, we released that testimony in Transformation of America. For someone to sit down and read Transformation of America now, which they do, it's available on my website and on Amazon, secured information there. When people read through it, it's disjointed. It's not a story, and it's not meant to be in story form, because this is the way memory actually is written out. This is a great example of how it is written out is more important than what is written out. So it's not written as a story so that people will, it was just the facts, fact after fact after fact. And that's how memory needs to be written out. Again, PTSD Time to Heal shows how to do that. So whatever anyone's level of trauma is, whatever they have been through, whatever repressed memory that they might have undermining their everyday life, they can write it out too. Get it out of the clutter, get it out of there so it can't undermine life anymore and create depression and negativity. It's so easy to be able to write that out. Everyone can use this particular tool just to deal with the magnitude of what we've all experienced with this COVID mess, this fear of death that has been manipulating the minds of the whole global population. And when people had to wear masks, they quit talking with each other 6 feet away or 6 feet under. You know, they followed all these mandates that masks are used in MK Ultra mind control because they silence voices, depersonalize. We can't see each other's beautiful faces and smiles and everything anymore. And they inhibit oxygen to the brain. Inhibiting the oxygen to the brain stops an ability for critical analysis, free thought. It makes a person more suggestible and easily led. So we have a lot to heal from. We need to all heal our brains just from having worn those masks. You know, I never wore one. I knew exactly what it was from the beginning, and I just refused to give in. I too much of my life was already ruled by mind control, and I recognized that it was not going to happen any further. And instead, I was able to help lift others and help them realize the importance of free thought. That everyone who caved in on that COVID thing, everyone who sheltered at home while our livelihoods turned to dust and ash, everyone who subjected their children to that horrible fear of that we're all going to die, our grandma's going to die if we don't wear this mask and inhibit that action. We all need to write it out, and we all need to come up with solutions, and then we need to move forward and educate ourselves to this mind-brain function that was used against us so that it never happens again, so that we can preserve the sanctity of free thought. Free thought is sacred. It's our birthright. It's our whole ability to live life's purpose, and we need to safeguard that from now on. And the best way to do it is just write it all out, heal our brains, heal our minds, heal our psychological torment, heal our soul expression, and reclaim it all and take back the beauty that life is. I celebrate every single day that I am free to live the love I am, to be able to live life's purpose, to be able to breathe free and think free and live free. It's such a celebration, and everyone can reclaim that celebration and that joy that life really is intended to be. It is in that space of happiness that we think with the most clarity. It's in that space that we're able to think creatively and to be able to move forward in a beautiful way, in peace and love for each other and in harmony with the truth that this life holds for us.
Beautiful. Cathy, I wanted to ask you, was there a place within your healing process for rage and anger? Like, did that at any point come up for you in your healing process?
Of course, especially knowing, having to deal with what had happened to my daughter, knowing what the plan was for the promotion of pedophilia for mind control on a global scale, just knowing how this was being, it's outrage. It's outrageous. It is. And I became so outraged over what had happened to my daughter and what was happening to her in a corrupted and ignorant mental health and justice system after Mark had rescued us and she was thrust back into that. That is in Access Denied for Reasons of National Security. It outlines that journey and what we went through. Of course, I was outraged, but I found that rage was blinding me to being able to think clear through it. I found that crying and feeling so sorry about it all, that I was just drowning in my tears. It was immobilizing, and it didn't empower any action. It didn't empower any positive way forward. And that realization was so profound to me that I realized that I needed to take the negative of my past and turn it into a positive that could help others. I needed to take the negative of what my daughter experienced and turn it into a positive that could impact her situation and actually help her. Love is the most powerful force in the universe, and rage doesn't work in parameters of love, so it inhibits. Negativity is immobilizing, and I found that I wasn't accomplishing anything. So the more I turned the negative into a positive to be able to make a difference by consciously choosing my thoughts, and being able to think in terms of solutions, I was able to move forward and live life in the way that it's supposed to be lived, instead of it just being completely bogged down in the depression and the brain chemistry that was sure to follow the rage and horror that I felt. So it became a conscious choice and ultimately a determination to drive my own brain chemistry in a much more positive way. It's like after when COVID hit, and seeing everybody, caving into mind control masked as a virus, knowing that the virus had a 99% survival rate, and that the national and global annual death rate didn't even go up. It went down some because people weren't traveling as much. Realizing all that, that was could have been its own rage, but instead I chose to stay above the storm, because above the storm is a much clearer view. And at that clearer view, I could see a way forward to be able to help others to be able to reclaim their free thought and see what was actually going on, so that we can reclaim our personal freedom and then reclaim our national freedoms, and our global freedom accordingly. It's that process that needs to be realized. But being able to see that solution and to be able to offer that solution and be able to speak out like this required being able to have a higher view in order to be in a place where I was lifted enough where I could lift others, because you can't go down to someone's level and push them up. No, you gotta be up at the higher level and then lift them up accordingly.
Yeah, I think where I've seen when I think about that in different emotions and whatnot, where I see it kind of play out is oops, sorry. Where I see that take place is when something like anger, it's like if someone's in a state of shame or despair or apathy, like when they're in a really low energy field, something like anger probably feels good in them because there's more energy in it. It's actually a higher level of consciousness, say shame. So from someone in this state of consciousness, anger can be a good tool to kind of push you up. And then maybe from anger, it can catapult you to pride. And then maybe from pride, you can actually start to get to the levels of like courage and then willingness and then you know acceptance, and then you start to move into these higher fields. So it's sort of there's like a progression, you know. And I think I think what Tay is sort of thinking too is sometimes people can bypass some of the reality of what they're feeling to try and just move to something higher. You obviously transmuted through the different levels and then arrived at something up in a higher state and realize the benefits for you to spread your message. You need to stay up there. And I totally get that, because whenever I hear something that's coming from a place of like anger or aggression, I immediately just kind of move away from it. I don't really want to hear it. So the only way you're going to be able to receive new information, and essentially when you talk about understanding and the knowledge is what heals things, it has to come from a place that's going to be receivable. And the only way that you're going to open a door for something to be receivable is when it's coming from a place of love and genuine care, right, for humanity. So when you're coming from that place, that's what opens the door for people to at least start to hear it. If it's being pushed from a place of anger and resentment about it, people naturally, even if it's true, it pushes people's defense mechanisms up, and then they just kind of shut away.
Brilliantly stated. That's so true, and we see so much of that in society today, where people are shouting or arguing at each other. And I saw it in relationships. Mark and I had a most beautiful relationship because we communicated rather than shouted and got angry and all that. Differences were something to learn from. If we certainly had different points of view, and an argument was something that it was a win-win, because if I was wrong, I got to learn something, and I think when people put aside anger and just get real and realize that conversation and differences are an opportunity to learn from each other, and it's such a beautiful thing, we can open our ears again. The people who have any level of mind control, and especially in the school systems, the ones on the streets marching to new world orders, the hate and rage and everything, it deafens. People can't hear when they're in that state of mind, and we need to hollering at them's not going to make them hear, because that's not what their level of deafness is. It's within them that's closing off their ears. So we settle that down, calm them with our calm, and show them their peace with our peace, and stand strong by truth. I never compromise truth, never give in any way. And yet it's like, even through all of COVID and never wearing a mask, never once was there any confrontation. I never experienced that at all, because people were so happy to see somebody smile, and I would be smiling, and I had compassion for them for falling prey to the fear. And so I think just the attitude that we carry within ourselves opens ears, and then they start hearing more, and that makes all the difference right there. We need to help other people learn to listen, have compassion for themselves, and not be people are beat themselves up for what they fell prey to, you know, and then themselves down further, and that's not going to thing. They need to have compassion as well and realize that I've been through a horrible experience, and we're all finally coming out of it now, and we're getting to the other side of it all, and we can all join hands and pull each other and do it with calmness and out of compassion and love, and not out of fear, rage, hate, judgment. You know, instead, start daring to care and move forward faster that way. Mark and I, because of the kind of relationship that we had, we were like 100% forward. We had a lot to accomplish in our whistleblower. We had a lot of people to waking up and educating, because my daughter needed people to understand what. That's how we became whistleblowers first. It was just my daughter's need, and we just, you know, we had to go 100% forward. So we didn't have that pulling against each other in the process. And when people unite in purpose, when they unite in love and cause and care, and they're not trying to dominate and compete with each other, like our relationship wasn't 50-50, it was 100. So we're both 100% in ourselves. And man, you can really rock it forward beautifully that way and make a huge difference. And when we all realize that we have this ability within us and this likeness within us, that it's our innate freedom and our innate choice, yeah, we can get through this curve really fast and reclaim the freedoms and the life that we're meant to lead.
Cathy, having you on this series is such a blessing for all of us, for all of humanity, really, because what you have gone through, your story, is so horrific. And to know who you are right now at this point in time is incredibly inspiring for all of us. Even when you speak of, you know, the journal process, and you speak of you yourself posing the solution, it implies that you within yourself innately know what you should do in order to heal yourself. And for a person who is struggling with that right now, so with somebody who doesn't believe they're good enough, they're worthy enough, they feel that they're unlovable, they feel despair, I'm thinking that, and their brain, even as you had mentioned, is disjointed, has compartmentalized things. So even their thought process is not harmonious. When they start journaling and they come across roadblocks, or they have those belief systems that they're struggling with, what advice would you offer them? Like, if they're coming against numbness and disassociation, and there's nothing coming up, nothing materializing as far as even being able to see a solution, other than worst case scenario, what advice would you offer them?
I think that Mark really helped me be able to deal with that and realize that what happened to me is what happened to me. That was imposed on me by others. Those were people outside myself. Those were people with a very dark agenda. That's not who I am. And I had to find out who I am. And I found who I am on the very base core energy of my being. And it's love. It's not that I would try to love myself from the outside in, because I already had enough outside in influence that was so negative and bombarded by so many horrific abusers, that to try to overcome that from the outside just wasn't working for me, and it wasn't making any sense. I think if everybody realized that we can't formulate who we are or realize who we are based on other people's opinions and perceptions of us, that we find it within ourselves who we really are, what our real purpose and point in life is, then we find it on that level of spirit, that energy of level. And as I found that within myself, it's the energy of love. And it's so simple to just be able to live the love I am. By living that love, I don't have to judge myself for what I had been forced to do and tortured to do under mind control. But I am responsible for my actions going forward now. And realizing that personal responsibility that comes with that kind of conscious awareness is a beautiful and empowering thing, because that's a great way to get to move forward. In so many ways, it was as though I had a blank slate from after writing out all that had happened and moving forward. I even had to learn to think my own thoughts and to think, be able to forward think for myself. So there's brain exercises too in PTSD Time to Heal, because I had to exercise my brain to be able to think, to move forward. And I pushed that forward with my strength of spirit, with the love that I am. So it became the motivation behind my thought processes that allowed me to be able to think with clarity and in ways that were more empowering and not self-judgmental in a negative way, but rather to allow me to move forward and take personal responsibility for every action going forward. And being able to do that, it's an opportunity every day to be able to make a positive difference. It's an opportunity every day to live life's purpose. And Mark's life's purpose was interrupted, and it was disrupted. And I made a conscious choice then that I was going to move forward in living our shared life's purpose in light of love. And it was a choice I made. When I lost my soulmate and my hero and the one who saved my life and saved my mind and empowered me in so many ways, and he's just so phenomenal. And to have lost my best friend that way, I could have just closed up and quit. But I knew that because I knew my spirit, because I knew my own sense of purpose, my own free will ability to live that purpose, I chose to move forward with a purpose that he and I shared. I chose to move forward with my life's purpose and continue making a positive difference in light of what I know. Knowledge is our defense against mind control. Free thought is sacred. And that's something that I do know about, and healing from it is something that everybody needs these days. So I move forward in that light, and it's easy to maintain a positive attitude when you take personal responsibility for living your life's purpose.
Beautiful.
Cathy, it's such a pleasure being able to talk to you again. Do you have any last words of advice for anybody that is going on their healing journey right now, that is maybe stuck, that doesn't know where to go from this point? Any last words before we finish things up?
Yes, healing is a process. It's not an event. It's something over time, and it's very important to take that time for yourself and be gentle with yourself every step of the way. Every step is a progress in that process, and realize that there's going to be some days that are harder than others and some days that are easier, and be gentle through every bit of it and celebrate the freedom that you're gaining all along the way. PTSD Time to Heal has some nice tips to be able to keep moving forward and to be gentle and positive with yourself. I've posted it on my website at trance-formation.com, so that in an ebook form, so that people can have the information now, regardless of income. It has a pay what you can if you can option on it, because everybody needs to be able to have this wonderful information that Mark gave me that has allowed me to continue moving forward and to be able to apply it to themselves, because every moment of life is precious, and we all need to start living love and making a positive difference in light of what we know about our own truth and the truth about the world. And it's a beautiful way to live. Free thought is sacred.
So beautiful. Cathy, I think of some of the main points that kind of stood out for me during our conversation today is the emphasis on turning to and tuning into inner authority, our own spirit, which is our own spirit, which equals love. And you have spoken this about this numerous times, and it just pulls on my heartstring every time. Be the love that you are. Be the love that you are. And it's such a beautiful way to move forward within our lives. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Cathy. So for everybody there still on, this is all part of our trauma series. So we've got I think it's a 15-part series. I think we're adding a couple of more episodes too from other guests that we've been encountering as we've been doing this series. So check it out on the inspirehealthpodcast.com site. Check it out on the YouTube channel here at Dr. Jason Loken, MD, and you can learn all about that. We've got a whole array of different guests that are just brilliant minds, brilliant hearts that are just going to be sharing information with you, just much like Cathy has. So Cathy, we love you so much. I'm so glad that you continued on even after the loss of your loved one, and know that we're wrapping you in a big hug from over here too.
Thank you.
Thanks everybody for tuning in for us as well, and thank you for your questions. And
just so you know, we'll leave Cathy's contact below this video as well. So in case you're wondering how you can get a hold of her and you didn't catch that within the video, we'll have that below for you too.
Yeah, it's also on her other episode. So it's the one that's out right now on inspirehealthpodcast.com.
Yeah, watch
show
that
notes
as well.
Also have all of her info, but I'll add it to the show notes here too. Okay, everybody, thanks.